I thought about doing a skit with this plunger that I had, but this is something I use and it's pretty gross looking, so I don't think I'm gonna do that. Looks like you get to live another day. Yeah. Got him.
The Rabbids. What is there to say about these dudes? It's either you love or you hate these things. There's no in between. They're widely referred to as the minions of the video game world, even though they predate the minions by a few years, and much like the minions, they're just seen as a stain on the video game world. Most of their games are just seen as gimmicky party games. Although, I kinda enjoy the Rabbids. Maybe it's just nostalgia talking, but I loved playing the Rabbids games on the Wii. But I can understand why someone would hate these guys. They can be obnoxious, they're notorious for shoving Rayman off to the side for like almost a decade, although you can probably blame Ubisoft for that, and their games overall not really being the greatest things ever put onto a DVD. So I've decided to take a look at all of the Rabbids games and see how they hold up in today's world. And for that, we must start at the beginning. And that beginning is the original trailer for Rayman Raving Rabbids. Rayman 4! Yeah, this looks a bit different. A big world where you just beat the hell out of these guys. Also, the original designs of the Rabbids used to look like this. I would have had nightmares if they still looked like this.
I fear no man, but that thing, it scares me.
It seems like this game will be a fun time. It's a shame it didn't happen. Thanks to the great minds over at Ubisoft, this version was scrapped because of both time and they wanted more use out of those fancy new motion controllers from the Wii. Granted, it's not a total loss. Recently in 2023, the original prototype was found and there's a dedicated team of modders trying to restore this version into what Rayman 4 was originally going to be. Honestly, I can't wait for that to come out. But for now, let's head into what we actually got back in 2006. So the game opens up with Rayman chilling with some baby Glowbox at a picnic, who look very odd in this game, until the Glowbox start getting pulled into holes underground by the Rabbids who pop out of said holes. Rayman is then captured by this bigger Rabbid. He actually has a name. Sergui? I think that's how you pronounce it. And it's not long after you get kidnapped, you're kicked into this coliseum, forced to play these dumb challenges by the Rabbids, and man, these dudes want Rayman dead. They are vicious in this game. Or should I say, they're rabid. But essentially, you play through a bunch of minigames, get a plunger at the end of the final challenge of that round, and build a ladder to escape. The funny thing is that the Rabbids start to actually enjoy Rayman completing these challenges. They start off wanting him to fail, but then after a few rounds, less Rabbids appear in the audience, and the ones that stuck around seem completely uninterested. Near the end, they actually cheer for Rayman and gets a ton of fanfare for just appearing. Even your cell gets decked out throughout the game. You actually gain respect from these evil creatures, which I find kind of fascinating considering that almost every minigame you're beating the hell out of them. But in the end, once you collect enough plungers, Rayman can escape, but then realizes that he forgot all of the other glow boxes that he didn't save. So he tries to jump back into the hole to go and rescue them, but he gets stuck. And that's the end. Yeah, it's kind of a sad ending, but it's probably just sequel bait, which now we know has happened, and I don't even think the second game follows the same plot, so I don't know. Alright, well, enough about the plot, the gameplay. The structure throughout the entire game is that you have 4 doors you can enter, each one housing their own minigame. Once you complete 3 of the 4, the giant middle gate will open, leading to a usually shooting gallery game, where at the end you can save a glow box and win a plunger. A few times you'll get this racing minigame, which are fine, but they're not as good as the shooting games, and once you'll get the skydiving game. This one is kind of out of place compared to the other ones, but I'm getting ahead of myself. How about the standard minigames? They are fun. I'm not saying they're all fantastic or they're bad, they're pretty solid for what they are. Nowadays you might see a lot of these in other crappy party games, but I'm cutting this game some slack since it was one of the first of its kind, if you don't count something like Mario Party. These minigames do feel unique and there at least was some care put into each one, given it's Ubisoft. Each minigame has a certain goal you need to reach in order to beat them, either getting a certain amount of points or completing it within a certain time frame. and each one of these minigame uses motion controls. Yes, everyone's favorite control scheme. But to this game's credit, the controls are actually very good. I did have some hiccups, but I'm going to attribute that to old age on my Wiimote. Except for this one tracing minigame where my drawing just kept disappearing. Even back then, I remember it doing that, so I don't know, this one just sucks. Some of the ones I did really enjoy was the one where you have to shake a bell and lead the rabbit into a bunch of danger to get points, where he gets crushed by 50,000 pounds at the end. The one where you gotta drown the rabbits in carrot juice, I just like this one. This jukebox one where you have to hit the jukebox and make the corresponding rabbits dance, and then you just kick them into the stratosphere. This one soccer game where you kick Professor Barranco into the goal by shaking the remote controls violently and then steering him into the goal. Oh yeah, I guess I didn't talk about this dude, Professor Barranco. He appears throughout the game as a minor character, but it's not the same Barranco that appears in the second game, because that one is Barranco the Third, and this one's just Barranco the First, so I don't know what happened to Barranco the Second. I guess he just doesn't exist. I don't know, the lore's dumb. There's probably more to it, but I don't know the lore. Who cares? And who could forget the iconic dancing minigames that'll become a staple for each game to come? I always prefer the classic hit the notes with the motion controls or buttons, rather than just something like Just Dance. I really hoped the Just Dance style doesn't appear later. All of the dancing stages are real songs that just dubbed with Rabbids singing them instead. It's a shame Rayman didn't get his own cover song. I heard he's a great singer.
Tell me, baby, you satellite, infrared to see me move through the night.
Also, get used to hearing these songs, by the way. You'll be playing them multiple times if you go to 100%. Yeah, even though the box advertises over 70 quirky minigames, a bunch of them get reused. There are some changes to the later minigames to make them a bit harder, but some of the ones they chose to use twice are questionable. Like the cow milking minigame ends in like 15 seconds normally, but in the second version, you now have to press the A button when the bucket is full to swap it out. It's pretty riveting and it adds a whole like 2 seconds to the gameplay. This one Brain Maze game they used like 3 times. It's decent the first time, but it gets old. It's not that great. And, oh god, they used this one again? This one is nasty. Pulling worms out of a rabbit's tooth is disturbing. And their creepy smiles don't help out either. It's somehow not as disturbing as this brain-touching one. How come no one talks about this one as much as the worm tooth one? This one's fucking freaky. Well, if you manage to complete all 4 minigames in each stadium, you can unlock a piece of music or a new outfit for Rayman to wear. They're not required, but they should be required because, hey, they're funny costumes. The last group of minigames are in the last gate. The shooting gallery is the most common one, and for a good reason. Because they're good. You're armed with a plunger gun and a grapple hook, and all you have to do is shoot the living hell out of the Rabbids. The Rabbids are armed as well with their own guns, spiked clubs, fly swatters, sausages, and fucking bombs. Yeah, they fucking suicide bomb you. What a bunch of fucking freaks. The later ones will introduce tougher variants with armor, which can tank hits. This big gray one who are armed with explosions usually. These pogo guys, which are annoying to listen to every time they appear and they're annoying to hit. I don't like the pogo guys. And the Splinter Cell dudes that dodge everything and they taunt you when you miss, but luckily you can shoot them in the face. And you'll occasionally fight a mini-boss that'll shoot rockets and you have to deflect them back. I gotta say, my favorite thing about these shooting gallery games is the grapple gun you use with the Z button. If any rabbit gets close, you can grab them and launch them into another group of rabbids for a combo kill. It's satisfying every time you do it. The second most common one is the race. You steer a pig creature thing through the track to win. There is some rubber banding with the later races, so that's a bit annoying, but if you can manage it with your speed boost correctly, it's doable. There's also like one race where you have to go against the other racers. It's like you're driving on the opposite side of the road. It's kind of weird. The last one is the skydiving game, which you play a grand total of 1 time. Well, 1 time in terms of the last minigame before the plunger. It does appear again at like the final Coliseum, but it's just a normal minigame. This one is also pretty fun, although steering it is a little bit weird. Sometimes it just doesn't want to work. You have to hold the controller in a very specific way, or it just doesn't steer correctly. So overall, the minigames are good, in my opinion. They're not as replayable as I would like them to be. Comparing it to the sequel at least, most of the ones in this game I'll only replay if I fail to beat them the first time. There is multiplayer for this game, but it's not really advertised a lot, and most games feel like they're designed with one person in mind mainly. What I think still holds up the best after almost 20 years is the presentation. This was a launch title for the Wii back on November 19th, 2006, and it still looks great. I know it's not widescreen, even playing it on the Wii U, it's still in 4:3, but that's not a point against the game. From the intro cutscene to each minigame to the movement of Rayman and the Rabbids, everything looks great. Well, except the baby Glowbox, who don't look fully rendered in this game, especially when you compare it to something like Rayman 2, where they actually have like textures and stuff. The soundtrack is also very well done. Usually when you think of the soundtrack of a Rabbids game, your mind goes straight to the licensed tracks, and while those are great in their own right, low-key I really enjoy the Rabbids cover of Girls Just Wanna Have Fun. The normal minigame music is also a bop when you take the time to hear it and are not getting constantly screamed at by a bunch of crazed bunnies. The victory theme is also stapled into my brain until the end of time. But if you're super picky about a 4:3 ratio, how about I introduce you to another version of this game that might tickle that itch. In 2007, an HD port was made for the Xbox 360. Well, it's the same game, just in a higher resolution. But hang on, the 360 didn't have a motion controller at the time. Fuck you, Kinect, we'll get to your broken ass later. They just used normal button and thumbstick aim, which I guess is more closely associated with the PS2 version, which exists and I totally did not forget about while I was talking about the Wii version. Also, the rest of this review, I definitely didn't forget about the PS2 version. I was totally going to mention that at some point.
No.
It's fine if you prefer it with the normal button controls, but in my opinion, I think it plays worse. Aiming with the Wii remote to shoot Rabbids is a lot more fun to do than slowly aiming the reticle over to shoot. Mashing the trigger buttons instead of having a spaz attack with the controllers is just worse, especially because my 360 controller likes to disconnect a lot. I gotta get a new battery pack for this thing. Don't even get me started on that tracing minigame. If it doesn't work in the Wii version that well, what makes you think it's a lot more fun in the Xbox version without motion controls? Just get this tracing one out of the way. Just get it out of here. Some minigames are better without motion, like the pig abduction one, but these are few and far in between. If you do want motion, you can use the Xbox Live Vision camera, which I don't own, so I can't tell you if it sucks or not. And I don't think the Kinect would work with this, considering it's old, and I doubt they updated this game for Kinect support. Even if it did, why would you use the Kinect? Kinect sucks. But I can show you this cool art book the 360 version comes with. It's pretty neat, honestly, I like it. It's not a bad version overall, it's just not my preferred way to play.
Man, dude, they got an ad for Rayman Kart. Oh, I wonder if this still exists.
I'm not done with this game yet. I still have two other versions to look at. The first is going to be the GBA version, which was released in November 2006. I guess GBA was still getting new games around this time. I personally moved on to the DS at that point. But anyways, if you want the official Rayman 4, you play this version. This game is not a minigame compilation like the console version, rather a 2D side-scroller much like the original Rayman. Except this game does not make me want to rip my balls out through my mouth on how hard it is. This one's pretty lenient on the difficulty. The story of this game starts off similar to the Wii version. Rayman is just chillin' until some Rabbids come by and toss him into prison. While trying to escape, Rayman rescues his friends that were also captured. Glowbox, the Teensies, Murphy, hey I saw you in Rayman 4, and even Lee the Fairy. After escaping prison, Lee tells us why the Rabbids went crazy, giving us their original backstory from the scrapped prototype. The Rabbids used to be a peaceful race until others took advantage of their kindness and made fun of them and treated them like crap. After a while, they snapped and sought to take revenge on literally everyone for all the crap they were put through. Now it's up to Rayman to stop them. Wow, a backstory where you could actually feel bad for the Rabbids. That was something that was missing in the console version. So like I said, it's a traditional side-scroller where you control Rayman and your goal is to reach the end of the stage. Along the way you'll fight weirdo enemies that look like they're straight from the first Rayman game, and of course the Rabbids. Some of these dudes look pretty funky in this game, they're kind of creepy looking. Finally, a game where the Rabbids are creepy. Rayman comes with the moves you would expect him to have if you played the other games. You can jump, you can throw his fists to attack, fly with his hair, swing on lums, the wall jump thing he does. It's all here. Each level also has collectibles. First are the lums, which are used to open up different worlds, and cages, which are used to access the boss fights in the end of the world. Most of the boss fights involve you fighting this giant gorilla rabbid, where you need to use your special costume abilities to beat them. Oh yeah, the costumes that were just a fun addition in the Wii version are actually power-ups in this one, also taken from the prototype. These costumes give Rayman the ability to ground pound, spit gum to create bounce pads, drop carrots to distract enemies, or maybe a really strong melee attack. While it's neat, I feel like their use only goes so far. Like for example, the first costume, the Gangsta one, you get after beating the jail level. You get the Gangsta costume after beating the jail level, that's pretty funny. Then the next world, the Toy World, you'll use it a few times to lower platforms and to beat a boss. After you beat that world boss, you'll get a new costume. That Gangsta costume, you'll never use again. Theoretically, you could use it again, but Rayman's fists just do all the work. There wasn't a moment past the Toy World where I needed the ground pound, and this goes for pretty much every single costume. They become completely useless after you finish a world. It would be fun to wear them, but wearing a costume makes you jump not as high, and you can't even punch enemies, so they're only really used to activate switches. It's kind of a letdown. There are two other level types. This one timed level where you collect as many lums as you can before time runs out. It's kind of similar to Donkey Kong Country. And this racing one where you need to race 3 laps before time's up. I guess Rayman Kart does exist. They're not super tough, and it's very forgiving if you don't collect everything. There are some annoyances I have with this game, the big one being screen crunch. A lot of portable games have this problem where the screen is just way too zoomed in so you can't really see what's ahead. Holding up or down doesn't help out all the time, and there are instant death traps you could accidentally fall into, or a random enemy flies at you. I'm looking at you, flying rabbit from the Sweets world. I hate you. You only get like 1 checkpoint per level 2, so if you missed it, you've got to hike your ass back and start over. But at least everything you've collected doesn't reset, even after a game over. Presentation is also very good in this game. Rayman especially looks very good. GBA sprites always looked great. I miss these days. Environments look pretty good, and the sound is decent as well. It's pretty bit crushed, but what do you expect from a GBA game? And some of the music can get a little annoying, but overall, it's pretty well done. I think this game is worth a playthrough if you enjoy Rayman. It's not a super long game, but very pleasant to go through. Finally, I saved the best for last. That's not true. The DS version. Side note, I didn't play through this whole game because it took me a while to get a copy of this game, and by the time I'm making this part of the video, the other parts have been done for like a week now. I played enough to form my own opinion at least. The Rabbids have invaded Earth, I think. It's Earth, wherever Rayman lives. I don't know where Rayman lives, actually. And now it's up to Rayman to stop them. He does not get kidnapped in this game, so you go, girl. It's not long after you're dropped into the first level. The gameplay is a weird mixture of both the Wii version and the Game Boy version, a side-scroller and mini-games right after you finish those levels. There's also these auto-run levels, but that's for a little bit later. The normal side-scroller levels are not as good as the Game Boy ones in my opinion. Rayman has some of the same moves as before, except things like climbing or swimming is locked behind a power-up now. He doesn't have his wind-up punch anymore, rather when you press the A button you'll throw a lum which has better range and does more damage. Although it requires ammo, but you'll most likely never run out of it, so there's no reason not to use it. Killing enemies in this game awards you with stars, which can be used to increase Rayman's health if you collect enough, kind of like Rayman 3 when you get enough teensies. The level design isn't great, it's not terrible, but it's just really simple. You have very basic jumps and obstacles to avoid. Very rarely did I ever go, this is pretty cool, or that's clever. I feel like I've seen these kind of things before in previous Rayman games and just other games in general. At least there's no screen crunch in this game, that's not a problem. After you finish a level, you'll play a minigame, and these minigames are not good. They're not good. Some of them are watered down versions of some of the console ones and feel worse than a crappy browser flash game. There are some new ones mixed in, but they aren't very fun. They're not even fun to talk about. They're just super boring. They're very easy. They're just very bland. They're not worth talking about, except for just this one little segment. The last gameplay type are these auto-run levels, which are the best part of the game. In these levels, you need to run to the end and grab the trophy while avoiding obstacles and the Rabbids chasing you down. The cool thing about these is that in order to destroy or manipulate the obstacles, you need to use Rayman's costume abilities. Oh yeah, the costumes are back in this game. Only 4 of them this time. There's no gangsta one. It's very sad, I know. And they function differently to the Game Boy version. Like the Granny costume spawns in boulders to use as a platform or to crush enemies, and the Goth costume now spawns bombs to blast open doors. The costumes are more context sensitive in this game, rather than switching between them on the fly. And if you don't know what context sensitive means...
It means context sensitive. It's sensitive to context.
Just walk up to a pedestal and press the X button, and then the ability will activate. I guess overall every costume gets more use than in the Game Boy version, but you'll be in the transformation for like 3 seconds in the normal level. You just use it to spawn whatever you need, and then there you go. That's all the costume gets used for. The auto-run levels is where they shine. You gotta swap between the costumes whenever you come across an obstacle that specific costume can deal with. It can get pretty challenging later when you have all of the costumes. While I do enjoy these levels, they definitely overstay their welcome because you play them after every single level. Much like the console game, get ready to replay levels over and over again, more so in this one because there's backtracking in this game. Some levels have alternate paths you can go down. They're usually marked with a sign numbered 1 to 3. Early on, you can't access them due to your lack of abilities. So you beat the level you're on, you go to the next level and grab a new ability, then you go back to the other level and go down a slightly different path to go to another new level. You get an ability there, and then you go back to another previously played level to open up another path.
Back and forward, and I'm sick of it! Well, I'm not gonna do it no more!
Yeah, that's not tedious at all. This isn't like Metroid or something where getting a new ability unlocks a whole new area to explore with cool shit to find. Nah, this is just padding to make the game longer. The music in this game is also just compressed versions of the Wii game. I don't think there's a single original song in this entire game. If the Game Boy version can have its own music, why can't this one? Graphically, it also doesn't hold up. Most DS games in 3D don't age gracefully as the 2D sprite ones. It's a good looking game for the time, just pretty crusty nowadays. So overall, the DS version isn't terrible, but you're better off playing any of the other versions of this game. And that concludes my look through of every unique version of Rayman Raving Rabbids. It was nice to go back to one of my childhood games again with a new perspective. Shut up, dog. Also playing some new games for the first time like the GBA port, and the DS version is a game that exists. The takeaway from this is that both the console and the GBA versions are worth playing, and try the DS version if you're mildly curious. Can that dog please shut up? I'm trying to record an outro here. When Rayman Raving Rabbids 2 comes around, I'll have less versions to look at, thankfully.